What's up, everybody? Fourth edition Lush Hour Sports. As always, Patrick White, along with Chuck Alcock, and a new face, Marc DeBolt, filling in for the usual Teddy Bailey and Dan Black, but they are unable to be here. So, Mark, thank you for helping out today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it should be a fun show here. We're going to be talking MLB, Home Run Derby last night, and then we're going to be talking the All Star Game, and then also some NBA talk with Tim Duncan just retiring. So let's start it off. We'll go in order. So Chuck, you can talk first, and then Mark, you can talk after this.
Sure.
So what did you guys think about the Home Run Derby with Stanton taking the crown? Was that what you guys thought, or yeah, just your general thoughts about it?
I was actually really impressed. I haven't watched I don't watch the home run derby every year, but that was probably the best performance I'd ever seen. He set the record, I believe, for most home runs in a home run derby, so maybe the best performance anyone's seen. And as a guy who's not super into baseball, the home run derby doesn't really do it into me. Do it for me. I'm more of like a slam dunk contest type of guy when it comes to those skill challenges. I thought it was very entertaining. You know, you had the Stanton putting up that big number, and then you had the two-time reigning champ going up against him, and it made for good TV. I think it had good coverage, and I've always wondered, if they swing differently for the home run derby. NBA players are often criticized for changing the way they shoot in the three-point contest to get up more shots faster, and in a similar timed event, being the home run derby. I always kind of wondered if they swing differently, but Stan looked like he wasn't even swinging that hard and hitting them for almost 500 yards. So it was really impressive, and I enjoyed it significantly more than I thought I would.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think it was a very exciting competition. I think MLB, they did a great job of changing the rules for the first time last year, going instead from the out system to just the 4-minute timing. Giancarlo Stanton, usually when you have a 3 rounds of home run derby, the guys tend to tire out, they can't sustain it. But he was hitting 20-plus home runs in all 3 of the rounds, totaling, I think, 61 home runs total, with about 30 or 40 of those going for at least 440 feet, which, is just absurd to watch that on live TV. Only a handful of people in the world could do something like that. So I would definitely agree that it was a lot more exciting than in years past, and now I'm looking forward to the All Star Game tonight.
Yeah, the All Star Game tonight will be a good one. But Stanton, I mean, he was the favorite coming in. I really didn't think he was going to win it. I knew Robinson Cano, those guys were going up against each other the first round. I thought one of them was going to make the finals. It ended up being Stanton, which isn't too much of a surprise. But yeah, Stanton was pounding the ball. Like, yeah, you guys both mentioned, he hit I think the farthest one he hit was like 491 or something, which is incredible. And he absolutely pounded Frazier in the finals. But yeah, Stanton looked like he wasn't even really swinging that hard, and he was putting them out. So it wasn't really that big of a surprise. My favorite actually going into this was Frazier, but he really just let people down in the final round. But yeah, Stanton absolutely dominated the competition. He only had 6 home runs before he took his timeout. I love the timeout thing they do nowadays. And and then after that he had like 14 or something, just ridiculous. So he just got real hot, and that's sometimes what it takes to win it, and that's exactly what Stanton did. Any other final thoughts you guys have about Home Run Derby?
Not particularly.
All right, well then let's move it on to the All-Star Game tonight. Should be a good one, American League versus National League. As always, the American League has Mike Trout, Chris Sale on the mound for them, and then the National League, Bryce Harper, and Johnny Cueto will be on the mound for them. So who do you guys think will be taking this matchup, and MVP thoughts or something like that?
Yeah, I've always paid more attention to the MLB All Star Game than I have other All Star games, given that it actually has some significance. The World Series home field advantage. I'm going to go with the American League for the main reason that I just like the American League more. I don't really have anything to justify that. But I feel like it's going to be a close game, high-scoring game as they normally are. And my pick for MVP is actually going to be Big Poppy, his first All-Star game in a few years, and his last one as this is his retirement season. And I believe there's a fan vote portion to selecting the MVP, if I'm not mistaken. He's pretty well liked. I could see him, hitting a home run, maybe getting an RBI single or something along those lines, and the fans supporting him. He should get a couple at bats as a starter. So he's my pick. I'm picking the AL to win a tight one, but a high-scoring game.
Mark, what do you think about it?
He looks frozen. Is he moving?
He may be frozen. All right, well, I'll just give my pick, and then if he gets back. I'm going to go with the AL. I think that they'll win this one, too. I like how you chose David Ortiz. I think he has a really good shot at winning the MVP. I'm actually going to go with kind of a strange pick here, but I'm going to choose Jose Altuve, the second baseman from the Astros. I'm a big fan of the guy. He's small. I don't even know how tall he is. Probably like 5'8" or something like that. But, man, this guy can hit the ball, and he can defend. And now he finds himself in the starting lineup for the American League. But the pitchers are great. Chris Sale with the White Sox is almost unhittable. And Johnny Cueto, the former Red, which is my team, who's been lighting it up for the Giants, and he was on the Royals last year, maybe 2 years ago. But nonetheless, Johnny Cueto is a good force for the National League. Not a big fan of how the voting goes for who is the starters for the All-Star games, because, I mean, you have a guy like Addison Russell who's the shortstop and he's starting, yet you have a guy like Trevor Story, a rookie, who didn't even make the All-Star game but has completely better stats in every single category than Addison Russell. Yet Addison Russell is still getting the start, which I think is a little – I mean, yes, it's the fan vote, and the Cubs are obviously huge fan base for them. But Trevor Story, I mean, I think should have been in the All-Star game, let alone I think he should have started for the National League. So I think it should be a tough one for the National League. Marcell Ozuna is going to be in center field, replacing Yoenis Cespedes, who we know because he was the previous or 2 years ago he won the home run derby, so he can hit the ball. But yeah, this National League team just doesn't really compare overall to the American League team. So I think the American League will take it. I'm going to go opposite with you, though, Chuck. I'm going to say that it's going to be a little bit low-scoring game just because pitchers are so darn good.
Look who's back.
Yeah, there we go.
Is he back?
Yep.
He's back. Mark's back. So, yeah, that kind of – so I think Jose Altuve will win the MVP. A little bit of stretch, but I'm going to stick with it. And then I think the American League will take the crown for the All-Star game this year. Now, Mark, I know you were away, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the American League, too. I think that the fans just did a better job of picking the more deserving players to at least start the game. The Cubs, I think they have kind of tipped off a little bit of late. But having Addison Russell starting at shortstop, I don't think that was very well deserved, considering he's only reached about 240 batting average-wise this season. And I think Chris Sale is probably one of the most elite pitchers in the game. Cueto, he can kind of be all over the map. He's struggled in the All-Star games in years past. So I'm definitely going to stick with the AL this year. But, anything can happen. It could be, a guy in the bullpen blows the game late. But yeah, I'm going to stick with the AL.
Okay, now if you had to give an MVP vote, who would you give it to?
MVP, I think I'm going to go with Mookie Betts.
Okay.
I think that he's probably one of the most versatile players. He can steal bases. He can make plays in the outfield. He can hit for power. I think he's probably one of the best up-and-coming five-tool players, at least in the game right now, besides probably Mike Trout. So I'm going to go with Mookie Betts.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I love Mookie Betts too, him for the Red Sox. And also Jackie Bradley will be joining him, another Red Sox in left field for the American League. And that game is tonight at, I think, 7 or 8, something like that.
7 o'clock, I think, yeah.
Okay, yeah. 8 p.m. Eastern and then 7 o'clock for you guys in Central Time. Any other final thoughts about All-Star Game, Home Run Derby, anything like that? Anybody? Anybody? Going once, going twice, going three times. Okay, moving on. We're going to talk NBA. Let's address first Tim Duncan, his retirement. Does this come to any surprise to you? Chuck, what do you think about it?
I was actually kind of expecting him to return when he didn't make an announcement during the season, but looking back on it, the way he announced his retirement was very fitting. And I actually think it's kind of a great contrast that you can really appreciate the difference between Kobe and Duncan and the way that their retirements went. You know, Kobe's was a big production, had this whole retirement tour, got standing ovations anywhere he'd go. It was a big deal. You know, his 60-point game to close it out. It was just this big production. And Tim Duncan, matching both his game and his personality, his retirement's clearly more quiet. He's not even hosting a press conference, won't even speak about his retirement. It's the definition of low key, I guess you could say. And but you know, he's truly one of the greatest players of all time. A lot of people call him the greatest power forward of all time. I don't really see that, as he's played more than half of his minutes at center. I don't know if you can quite call him a power forward, even though he did start his career there. 5-time champ, 3-time finals MVP, 2-time league MVP. I mean, the accolades just speak for themselves. A first ballot Hall of Famer without a question. And the Spurs will be losing one of their great leaders, and the NBA will be losing one of their best men. And he'll be missed, but you have to respect Tim Duncan and all he's done for the game.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the contrast between the departures of Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan, you know, it couldn't be more fitting. Kobe Bryant is a guy that has loved the attention in LA, where Tim Duncan has been content playing in the small market of San Antonio for his entire career. But I think the first time I probably realized that it was a possibility that he would leave this year is with the signing of Pau Gasol in free agency for the Spurs. You know, it didn't really make sense for Pau Gasol and Tim Duncan to be on the court at the same time. The Twin Towers, you know, that doesn't really fit the style of the NBA, with guys like Roy Hibbert kind of starting to deteriorate. Timothy Mozgov, even though he's getting a big contract, I don't think he really has a huge place in the NBA. So I think that, you know, Tim Duncan, he's been great for basketball. He's been a great career, and it was certainly fun to watch the Spurs all those years in their prime, and even as they started to age. So a lot of respect for the guy, and I'm happy to see that, you know, he's moving on to bigger things in his life.
Yeah, the way Tim Duncan went about his retirement was no surprise. Chuck, you kind of mentioned it a little bit. He was a low-key, even-keel type of guy, was never really loving the spotlight or anything like that. Didn't have a retirement tour like Kobe Bryant did. But yeah, it didn't really take me by too much of a surprise. Mark, like you were saying, once they signed Pau Gasol, you kind of had a good feeling that the Spurs were thinking that Tim Duncan was not going to return, and he obviously did not return. A little bit strange that he does even have a press conference, just because you would think he would want to just clarify some things with the media and whatnot, but that's not Tim Duncan. I think he's just going to step away from the game. I don't see him really even being a front office type of guy. Like Kobe Bryant could end up owning a team someday, or being somewhere in the management positions for some NBA team. Tim Duncan, I don't really see him being that. But Tim Duncan, his career was unbelievable. Drafted in '97. Played 19 years, made the playoffs every single year. So yeah, he was a great leader, the big fundamental as they call them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Spurs can play without Tim Duncan. Yes, Tim Duncan really wasn't a force towards the end of his career, just because in the playoffs I felt like he wasn't even really a factor in some of the series. I think there was one game where he didn't even score or something like that. So you kind of knew his end was near. So yeah, Pau Gasol will be a good fit instead of Tim Duncan, but yeah, it is a little strange to not see Tim Duncan playing. But how do you guys think the Spurs will respond with the departure of Tim Duncan?
Well, real quickly, side note, I just want to point out how I think Tim Duncan is one of the best examples of taking care of your body in professional sports. I mean, he was an all-star last season, 2 seasons ago, whatever you want to say, at age 38. I mean, that's impressive. His production numbers, although they dipped as he aged, still maintained very high until this most recent year when first year he averaged below 10 points a game. And I think that's a trend that you're going to keep seeing. I mean, Popovich is kind of infamous for sitting his stars when they're games that don't really need to be played. And I wouldn't be shocked to see a guy like LeBron, other players who are more physical as they get older, just simply playing less because that's what Tim Duncan did, and it extended his career. And it wasn't like a Kevin Garnett situation where you're looking at a shadow of a player who once was. Tim Duncan was always, still the Tim Duncan that people knew and appreciated. But as for the Spurs, I don't think this is a huge hit. I think Pau Gasol has a very similar skill set to Tim Duncan. And I don't think with Tim Duncan or with Pau Gasol, this team is really capable of beating the Warriors in a 7-game series. I don't think they have the scoring to keep up with them. Kawhi Leonard is definitely the future of that franchise. It'll be interesting to see how LaMarcus Aldridge ages. I think he's 30 or 31. Tony Parker's 34. Manu Ginobili, has he announced if he's coming back or not? I knew that was a thing.
He hasn't announced
He was
yet.
pondering. But he will likely not play much of a role except a bench guy next year. So in the next couple years, they'll start looking different. Boris Diaw's gone, but I think as long as Popovich is the coach with that front office they have in place, and Kawhi Leonard's wearing a Spurs uniform, I think they'll be among the top in the NBA.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think that the Spurs are necessarily going to have a drastic difference from last year to this season, especially with the addition of Pau Gasol. I think the really only thing that you're going to lose there between a younger Gasol and an older Tim Duncan is probably some defense. Gasol has always been known more as a scorer and maybe didn't really try as much on the defensive end. But who knows, maybe that could change under Popovich. I just don't think Duncan, despite still putting up some decent numbers, I don't think he was the go-to guy on that team anymore, especially with Kawhi Leonard. But I think, like you said, the Golden State Warriors are just a force to be reckoned with. I don't see anybody really in the West that can put up anything close to them, especially scoring-wise. But maybe like I've heard a couple of guys quoted saying that there's only one ball on the court, and there's a lot of guys on the Warriors that can score. So that could be an issue, but I still see the Spurs probably being a top 5 team, at least in the West, top 3 team. So not too big of a difference from last year to this year.
Yeah, I'm going to have to kind of agree with both you guys have been saying. I think this is Kawhi's team now officially. I think it kind of was his team even last year. But with the addition of Pau Gasol, they won't lose too much. Like you said, Mark, I think they'll be a top 5 team in the West. But, I don't see anybody touching the Warriors and their situation. Now, Mark, I'm going to have to ask you, since you haven't made any of our other shows and you're new here, we've been kind of talking about the Warriors. Do you think that anybody has a shot of beating the Warriors, whether it be in the NBA Finals or playoffs in general?
Out of the West, I don't see anybody really that can compete, going up to the championship. I think, unless there's a drastic injury, and, even with the Curry injury, the other guys like Klay Thompson, they really picked up the slack for him, so that might not even be enough. The East, nobody's really made any big moves. The Heat have deteriorated in free agency with the loss of Dwayne Wade, so they aren't a real threat. I think the Cavaliers still are probably the only real option with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving to at least put up a fight. But I don't know, unless they do something to get rid of Kevin Love and add some, better, bench players and some better role players, I don't see anybody really putting up a real chance against the Warriors.
Yeah, and that's kind of echoing what we've been saying. So that's kind of all of our thoughts about Tim Duncan. Do you guys have anything else you guys want to mention with Tim Duncan or the Spurs?
I think so.
All right, well then let's talk about Dwayne Wade. Sort of a surprise. Last show we talked about it before it happened. I don't think any of us even thought he was going to leave, let alone go to Chicago. So Chuck, what do you think about Dwayne Wade's decision to leave Miami and go to Chicago?
Well, I mean, he went to his hometown team. If he was going to ever leave Miami, it was going to be to Chicago. There were Cleveland rumors, and clearly there was really no substance there. Cleveland couldn't have afforded him. And yeah, he took visits with Milwaukee and Denver, but I think Chicago was really the only franchise that could have really acquired him. And I think it just came down to Pat Riley kind of outfoxing Dwayne Wade. I don't think Pat Riley wanted Dwayne Wade back. He's an expensive, um, aging veteran, and despite all that he's done for the Heat franchise, the 3 titles, um, essentially getting LeBron James and Chris Bosh there, I don't think he was really worth the amount of money he was asking for. I think Pat Riley realized this and intentionally lowballed him with the first offer. I don't remember what it was. I think it was somewhere in the ballpark of like $10 million, which Dwayne Wade was not having, and then intentionally lowballed him again at a more reasonable price. But I don't think Pat Riley wanted him back. I think there was some serious friction there because of the way those negotiations went. And Dwayne Wade realized, you know what, it's time for me to go. I don't think it's the way he wanted to go. 2 months ago, if you asked Dwayne Wade, are you ever going to put on another basketball jersey, he probably says no. I think this was fueled by Pat Riley's unwillingness to pay Dwayne Wade what he wanted to receive. It's unfortunate for Miami that they don't really have. There isn't really a lot of guys left on the market for them to really throw money at right now. They're just trying to return players. They had a couple restricted free agents that they brought back. But I think they really have their sights set for the offseason here in a couple years, or next year maybe. You got Russell Westbrook, a few other guys. You got Paul George in 2 summers. I think Pat Riley does have a plan. There's going to be a new superstar on the Miami Heat in a couple years. It'll be really interesting to see who that is. But I do think Pat Riley did this on purpose, and it sucks for Dwayne Wade. It probably sucks for Heat fans right now, but Pat Riley has something up his sleeve, and I think it's going to pay off in the long run.
Yeah, I think this had probably been something that had been on Dwayne Wade's mind, at least for the last few seasons, especially with the departure of LeBron James back to Cleveland. Because there had been rumors in the past where he had wanted to go back to his hometown of Chicago and finish his career, but nobody really took it seriously. I think the last offer by the Miami Heat was around 2 years and $40 million, and he ended up accepting a 2-year, $47 million deal.
Right.
Chicago Bulls. So $7 million I don't think is really a lot to Dwayne Wade at this point in his career. The big question for me is what is the mindset for the front office of the Bulls, because I trust Pat Riley. He's done his job. He's brought championships to Miami, but I just don't see exactly what the Bulls are trying to do. It kind of looked like they were going to hand the ropes over to Butler by getting rid of Rose, but then you bring in Rondo and Dwayne Wade, both of whom are kind of aging stars, I guess you could put it. So to me, they just don't really have a clear plan, at least I can tell. It'll be interesting to watch and see how that goes down, especially with how they play Rondo, Butler, and Wade together. That could be one of the best front courts in basketball, but injuries could also take their toll. So it'll be interesting to watch, but it'll be cool to see Dwayne Wade go home and play in front of his family and his friends in Chicago. And I wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't too much of a surprise because if we remember before the Big Three down in Miami even were formed with Chris Bosh and LeBron James, Dwayne Wade was thinking about Chicago. It was whether to stay in Miami or go to Chicago. So he obviously stayed in Miami, and we kind of know the rest. But signing with Chicago wasn't too much of a big surprise. I guess it is a little bit just because no one ever thought he was going to leave Miami, just because he is towards the end of his career, and nowadays you barely ever see one guy stick with his team for his full years, other than guys like Tim Duncan and Kobe Bryant. But Yeah, Dwayne Wade going back to Chicago. Not really sure, kind of like Mark, how you said. I thought the Bulls were going to hand it over all to Jimmy Butler and just kind of say, Butler, this is your team now. No more Rose. And Jimmy Butler and Derrick Rose did not get along too well. And now you're adding a guy like Rajon Rondo, who's
Yeah.
kind of trouble, and you're adding a guy like Dwayne Wade. I don't see this working out well for the Bulls. I don't know what they're going to try to do with it. I saw something too where all three of them can't shoot a three-pointer to save their lives. So you might as well just back off of them and let them shoot and try to have the Bulls beat you by a three-pointer if I'm somebody else. But yeah, Dwayne Wade, he's towards his end of his career. I saw something where Denver actually offered him more money, but I don't think it was really too much about the money in this situation. I think he wanted to go back to Chicago, or if he would have gotten paid more, he would have stayed in Miami, but they didn't give him what he wanted. Pat Riley just wasn't having it. Chuck, like you said, I heard something where Pat Riley didn't even reach out to Dwayne Wade during this free agency process. So obviously there's a problem right there if your guy Pat Riley isn't even reaching out to you. So Dwayne Wade felt wanted in Chicago and he took it. So and he got paid too. He took pay cuts for LeBron James and Chris Bosh for when they came to Miami. So now he's getting paid and he's heading back home. So I don't think Dwayne Wade has any regrets at all. If anything, Pat Riley might have a couple regrets, but maybe not. But it'll be really interesting to see how the Chicago Bull team stacks up this year, because you have Jimmy Butler, Rajon Rondo, Dwayne Wade, and now you added a guy in the draft, Denzel Valentine. So maybe you're going to have a guy like Valentine learn from a veteran player like Dwayne Wade. But we'll see. I'm not sure the Bulls really help themselves in this free agency and just offseason in general. But Dwayne Wade to Chicago, not too much of a surprise. Any other thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, I kind of agree with the sentiment that this Bulls backcourt won't work. I think Jimmy Butler's the best three-point shooter, and he shoots pretty much right at 30% from three,
which is not good.
And if you look at the landscape of the NBA, it's math. Three is worth more than two. The Warriors figured that out for some reason faster than anyone else, and we're going to chuck a bunch, and we don't even have to make as many, and we're going to score more than you. So I don't really see it working. They might sneak into the playoffs because the East is still significantly weaker than the West, despite what some people may think. I think seeds 6 through 8 are going to be significantly weaker than seeds 6 through 8 in the West. So they might be able to sneak in. They clearly have the talent for it. But I just don't see this working in any championship level capacity. And I agree with you, Mark, and Pat, for that matter, that it just seemed goofy to bring in another alpha dog when the Bulls appeared to want Jimmy Butler to kind of take the reins of the franchise, be the next face of the Bulls, as if he wasn't already, to kind of, with Noah and Rose both gone, those were the two kind of Chicago Bulls of this, decade. And now it's going to be Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade and Rajon Rondo. It just seems pretty messy to me. And they're in a tough division. The Pacers made some moves to improve. The Cavs obviously are there, so they're going to have a tougher schedule in the East. It'll be interesting to see if they sneak in. It's definitely a passionate fan base, good home court advantage, but I'm not seeing it as seeing them as getting past the first round if they even make the playoffs.
Mark, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I did want to add, I think for Dwayne Wade, if he wants to make that last playoff push, going to the Bulls might have been the better bet. Luol Deng, he left in free agency to the Lakers. Chris Bosh is a huge question mark on whether he can ever even play basketball again. The Heat did retain Hassan Whiteside, but he's a question mark with his character. So I think that the Heat had a lot more question marks, more so than the Bulls. I think that, despite whatever friction or whatever problems they could run into with having 3 alpha dog guards playing together, I think the Bulls still have enough talent to at least make the playoffs, where the Heat, they might not even have that ability at this point anymore. So I think for Dwayne Wade, it could have just been he wanted to go home and he wanted to bring that playoff atmosphere, just back down to his home city. So that'll be something to look forward to.
And
Yeah,
going back to my comments about Pat Riley having a potential master plan to acquire another superstar, if Chris Bosh does not play this season, then his contract is null and void, and that money goes off the books. And I don't want to speculate, but if a doctor reaches out to Pat Riley and he's like, yeah, he might be able to play, might not, should we look into it? He might say no. Like, I mean, this guy's about winning. He had a similar situation with Dwayne Wade back with Alonzo Mourning. He let Alonzo Mourning walk because Alonzo felt like he was worth more money. So clearly, Pat Riley, I don't want to say he's like heartless, but clearly he prioritizes the health of the franchise over, I guess, relationships or personal stuff. So, good or bad, however you look at it, I think he's doing something so that he's got the Heat in championship contention again before he ultimately retires.
Well, and
yeah.
I'm not a Heat fan, but I think if I am a Heat fan, I like what Pat Riley's doing. I read Dwayne Wade said the other day that, Pat Riley, he's one of my best friends, but he's not with the Heat organization to be my best friend. He's there to be a businessman, to get the job done and to bring championships to Miami. And I think, a move like this is, pretty clear cut that, he's doing a good job or at least trying to.
Yeah, Pat Riley's all business, and he saw that Dwayne Wade was towards his end, and he didn't want to dish out that money. And sometimes if you even have close relationships like that, you have to cut them off just because they don't deserve it. So Pat Riley kind of did have to have a cold heart a little bit, but he ended up letting D Wade go. And I'm looking right now who the Heat have tried to replace D Wade with. They added Rodney McGruder, Wayne Ellington, James Johnson, and Derek Williams. So the only name that strikes out to me is Wayne Ellington. So that, I mean, what do you guys think? Anything like that, even close to replacing Dwayne Wade? Have you even heard of those guys in general?
Well, I don't know if they're really planning on any of those guys being starters. They might start Josh Richardson at the 2. I think that would make the most sense. Obviously, really no one's going to replace Dwayne Wade. At this point, you can probably say he's the greatest player in the history of the organization. Maybe not the most talented when you throw in, late prime Shaq and obviously prime LeBron, but as a whole, Dwayne Wade's been more important to that franchise than any player ever has, and maybe ever will be. We'll see. But so no, I don't think any players are immediately going to replace his production. I expect Goran Dragic to score a little more. Hassan Whiteside obviously is going to get more touches. And this is definitely a year of transition for Miami. I think they're trying to put pieces around a star that they don't have yet. And as I've said a few times now, I think that star is coming. Hopefully not Paul George, though.
Yeah, I would say that some of those free agency additions, James Johnson, I think he's coming from the Nets. He was kind of one of their sixth man guys that would kind of come in and score for him. I think these guys, they aren't even considered young talent anymore. I think they've been in the league for at least 5 or 6 seasons. And at this point, he's just trying to put, a competitive roster on the court, something that fans will still come and see. And who knows, maybe the Hassan Whiteside and Goran Dragic combo is enough to carry them to the playoffs. And these guys are good pieces, continue that. And I don't think they're anywhere close to replacing Dwayne Wade, even at his age. He was still putting up over 20 points a game. So I think he's just kind of buying his time until the right guy comes onto the market for free agency.
All right. Any other final thoughts about the Miami Heat and Dwayne Wade? We good? All right. Well, let's move on then. Down to our last 5 minutes here of Lush Hour. Let's kind of talk about some IU basketball, I guess you could say, since we're IU guys. Troy Williams, in his first summer league game last night, Phoenix Suns.
That was his third. Last night was his third summer league game.
Okay, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about
Or
then.
second. He has his
Second
third
or
one
third,
tonight.
either way, not his first. But he put up 7 points last night in 14 minutes. And then Yogi Ferrell did not even play for the Brooklyn Nets summer league team. So Chuck, we were kind of talking about this before. Down to our last 4 minutes. So what do you think about their situation?
I don't think either has really played themselves into a roster spot. They both have a shot at a training camp invite. I haven't really looked into the fact that Yogi did not play today. Maybe it's injury related, although I have no reason to really believe that. He hasn't been playing great in the summer league. He's kind of had a quick trigger, in all honesty, probably trying to prove he can shoot to that 3-point range. He's had multiple games where it's been like, I think one game he was like 2 for 6 from 3 or something like that. Just shooting too much, especially for a player whose path to the NBA is as a facilitator. And then for Troy Williams, I think the summer league kind of proved what Hoosier fans have kind of known for a while, that he's an explosive athlete, an exciting basketball player, plays hard, but just maybe not skilled enough, does not have the decision-making ability to really thrive at the next level. You got to be able to shoot in today's NBA. If you're shorter than 6'11", you got to be able to shoot. It's just the nature of the NBA. And Troy can't. I mean, his percentages have gone up during his time at IU, and although they're solid for college, they're not solid for the pros. Combined with that with an extended 3-point line, and that spells trouble for Troy. But yeah, I think both guys are playing hard. I wish them the best, but I don't think either are having quite the summer league performance they were hoping for. So hopefully they can get something going in training camp, maybe spend a year in the D League, improve something, and get to the NBA. But I hope neither guy drags out this NBA dream too far and goes over to Europe at some point and makes some money.
Yeah, as far as Troy Williams goes, I think that he's never going to be the shooter that the NBA looks for. I think he's going to have to be a guy like Andre Iguodala, where he does all the little things that make him a great player, a good rebounder, good at defense. I think those are the things that Troy is really going to have to improve on as far as playmaking and showing that he's capable of, playing on a Suns roster. As far as Yogi, Chuck, I saw you tweet the other day that he's shooting too much. His role in the NBA is as a facilitator, and I totally agree with that. He got a tough break with Jeremy Lin signing with a pretty big for the Nets. Then you have Shane Larkin, who's 5'10", and already established himself on the Nets roster. And though he's not a shooter, he's proved that he can be a playmaker, that he can facilitate for the other guys on the roster. And, I think that was kind of the strategy that Yogi needs to adapt himself more to and realize that he's not going to be the go-to guy like he always was at Indiana. But I wish these guys, nothing but the best, especially Yogi. I wanted to see him, come out firing on all cylinders, but it just hasn't been clicking so far.
Yeah, this is kind of what I expected with Troy. He's just not ready. Everyone, I think, has been saying that. He wanted to go. He thought he was ready. So Troy, enjoy your time in the D League or over in Europe. I don't see him being with a team full time this year. And then for Yogi Ferrell, I thought he was going to actually really work out well, but like you said, Chuck, he really needs to show off in this summer league, which he hasn't, obviously, because he hasn't even gotten a chance to play, at least in this past game. But he hasn't shown the coaches enough what he deserves. So I don't see him making a team either. So both these guys will probably end up in the D League. But yeah, hope for the best for both of them as IU guys. Maybe a situation kind of like Christian Watford, where they kind of hang around in the D League a little bit. Not that I'm hoping for that, but that's kind of what I see with them for both of those guys. So yeah, any final thoughts as we're hitting the 7 o'clock mark right about now?
Well, I think people are a little quick to judge Troy Williams on going pro. I mean, clearly he wanted to play professional basketball. He wanted to go to another challenge, and I don't think you can really get mad at him for that. I mean, he knew going undrafted was a possibility. He knew not playing in the NBA was a serious possibility, but if that's what a guy wants to do, I think IU fans are a little quick to criticize him, thinking that, why do you think he could go pro? Well, I think he knew he wasn't super likely to get drafted. So, I think him and Yogi both have a fight ahead of them in the years to come to try to make it to the NBA. If I had to pick one that was more likely than the other, I'd go Yogi, just because I think he fits better into today's NBA. I think they'll both be on D League rosters for sure if they want to be. It'll be really interesting to see how they both pursue making an NBA team. But again, we wish them, as you both said, nothing but the best. But it is what it is, and I'm already excited for the next batch of freshmen coming into IU. Can't wait for more IU basketball. So, I'm sure we'll talk about that as we get later into the summer.
All right, Mark, you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, I think that Troy, he was always kind of under fire at IU. No matter what he did, for every good thing he did, he had two bad things sometimes, and that always kind of bothered people. But I think for a player of his style, going 1 year early was probably his best bet because I think he was going to the D League no matter what. I think it was just better for him to get that 1 year head start. He needed a guy like Yogi Ferrell to really facilitate and make him better, and Yogi wasn't going to be there this year. So like Chuck said, I'm looking forward to the upcoming season, and hopefully I'll look forward to watching these guys join Victor Oladipo in the league, Cody Zeller, sorry. Hopefully something can come from that. But just wanted to say thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it's been great, and thank you for filling in kind of last minute for Dan Black and Teddy Bailey. So Marc DeBolt, everybody, filling in on the Lush Hour. It's 7:02, so we're running a little bit late. Got started a little bit late, but still, it was a fun show. So as always, I'm Patrick White. Give me a follow on Twitter at PatrickWhiteIU. Give Chuck Alcock. He's got a bunch of followers on Twitter. He's really comical. So follow that man. Chuck, what's your Twitters?
Chuck and Duck 10. Let the letter N. Chuck and Duck 10.
Chuck and Duck 10. He still doesn't know how to figure out how to get this little name thing at the bottom. But hey, Chuck, we still love you, okay? And then
I appreciate that.
And Marc DeBolt, give him a follow on Twitter too. Mark, what's your Twitter name? Give yourself a shout out here.
It's gonna be at @mm_DeBolt. Go ahead and look me up. I'll give you a little politics insight and a little bit of sports insight, so I'll keep them mixed up.
So there you go. If you want a little bit of politics, if you want a little bit of sports, give Mark a follow. If you want a little bit of music, if you want a little bit of sports, follow Chuck. And you're going to have to follow me to see what I like to tweet. So give me, Patrick White IU, a follow on Twitter. So that's all for today. It's been a Lush Hour during the rush hour. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. And we will see you next Tuesday at 6 Eastern Time and 5 Central Time. Thanks.